Last one. Let's just swing it over now to the Jets, Brad, and close this thing out. Jets finished the season. What do you think their record was at the end of the season? Because I know you don't know it offhand. Tell me what their record was.
3-13.
3-13. 7-9.
Yeah. The Jets?
Jets were 7-9. Okay, so when this is interesting, right? Interesting. You wouldn't think they were 7-9. That's why I laughed when I saw the. I would have thought maybe 6-10, 5-11. But you look at that team, right? So they lose maybe the first two weeks pretty early. They lost 17-16 to the Bills early, 23-3 to the Browns, and then I think that's about the time Sam Darnold got the kissing disease. I don't know who he was kissing, but we know he got the kissing disease. And so then he goes out with mono, and then their backup quarterback, Simeon, gets hurt that first game, and suddenly you have this, this turd sandwich playing quarterback for like 4 games or whatever it was. So they went on a pretty bad losing streak. Then Darnold comes back. I think he comes back against the Cowboys, wins that game. So let's throw the first 3 games of the season out, okay? Yeah. Actually, you know what? Let me pull up the game log while I'm talking about this. Sam Darnold, and what I felt about this Jets team coming into the season was that, you know, they made this splash for LeVeon Bell. I never was a buyer that LeVeon Bell was going to be a difference maker there. I mean, what do you think about that?
No, I mean, well, you know my stance on running backs. I don't think they. Yeah, well, here's the thing: is I don't think they have the value they used to. However, I may have to eat a little crow on that because Aaron Jones was phenomenal this season. She was. Yeah.
He was a difference maker, but could you – I mean, he got the carries. Could you have put Jamal Williams in that role? If Aaron Jones wasn't on the organization, do you think Jamal Williams could have put up that same kind of volume, those same numbers? I mean, how much of it is system? How much of it is talent? Like, I think my view on running backs is similar to yours, but my view, and this is what kind of fuels the Fantasy Football Almanac and all this stuff, is it's not necessarily the talent level of the player. I mean, that has a lot to do with it, but it's the system that they're in. Like, LeVeon Bell doesn't all of a sudden suck. And suck is a strong word for what he did for the Jets last year. He's not all of a sudden bad, but to think that he's going to get the level of volume in an Adam Gase system, that's the important part, in Adam Gase's play calling and personnel distribution, all that, to think that he's going to get the same level of volume that he got in Pittsburgh is stupid. It's stupid. And that's what people think is like, oh, Le'Veon Bell, let's just import his Pittsburgh stats into the New York Jets. They're going to be fantastic. That's not the way it works. And a lot of people think that's the way it works. It doesn't. Christian McCaffrey this year is an interesting one because they have a new coaching staff in Carolina, right? Christian McCaffrey, 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000 yards receiving. Really, not Pro Bowl, MVP level talent. He's fantastic. I think he's going to be a future Hall of Famer. He's not going to get any worse physically. If anything, he's going to get better as a player, but I think he's going to be used less in this offensive system for a number of reasons. Number one being, if you're a first-year head coach, you're not coaching for your job. The last 2 years, Ron Rivera in Carolina was just like, give the ball. He's the only guy who can move the chains. I want to keep my job. Keep giving McCaffrey the ball. You know, Cam Newton's out. I got freaking Kyle Allen playing a quarterback. Give him the ball. Mark Rule and his staff isn't going to be like, oh, hey, 95% of the time, let's give the ball to Christian McCaffrey. They're going to try to save him. You know, they're not going to try to ride him to death because they're going to want him in year 2 and year 3 in his program. So his statistics, I'm sorry, they're going to come back down this year. That's not because Christian McCaffrey isn't freaking amazing, and I think he's the best, one of the best running backs in the league along with Nick Chubb, in my opinion. But, you know, you got to think about offensive system with this. So Le'Veon Bell, I wasn't really a big believer in him to go crazy this year, and he didn't. Let me go back to him, and I'll tie up the Sam Bradford stuff. So Le'Veon Bell's statistics, Brad, on this team, and of course he had 3 games with that third-string quarterback basically playing, but Le'Veon Bell, 245 carries, 245. He was getting like close to 400, I think, with the Pittsburgh Steelers. 789 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3.2 yards per carry. Is Le'Veon Bell bad? Did that year outside of football hurt him? No. He just doesn't have Ben Roethlisberger in that offensive system fueling him. 78 targets, 66 receptions, 461 yards. He was more receiver than he was running back last year on this team. And that's, again, it's the Gase factor. This is predictable, and I predicted it last year. I mean, it's not rocket science. So you got to pay attention to the play calling. Let me get back to Sam Bradford, though, or Sam Darnold. I keep calling him Sam Bradford. I apologize. It's just, I don't know why. Sam Darnold is way better than Sam Bradford was, so I don't mean any disrespect there. Okay, so Darnold misses weeks three. So they lost 17-16. Then he misses 3 weeks after that, Brad. So let me read through here. Darnold comes back against the Dallas Cowboys, wins that game 24-20. You remember that Dallas Cowboys game?
Yeah.
Everybody's freaking out about that.
That was a big game, man. That made me that was one of my favorite games of the year.
And everybody was talking about, Dak Prescott, he's not as good, and, how do you lose to the 0-4 Jets at that point? And then everybody, I remember Wolf of Tarpon Springs texting me, he's like, oh man, now with Darnold back, LeVeon Bell's going to go crazy. I said, no, he's not, but that's fine. Okay, so throw those first 3 games out the window. Suddenly they're a 7-6 team.
Right, I know. It's kind of like Miami. They weren't as bad as everyone expected them to be, and they have a lot of potential. And I'd like to see them, start to move upward in the league, right?
Yep.
And it may be appropriate timing because eventually I think New England takes a big step back, right?
Yep.
That may be unavoidable.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, let's face it, whether it's this year or next year, it's coming down the line. So
I feel like New England has 2 years of Super Bowl viability left.
I do too.
If they, of course, have Brady back, and if they fuel his passing weapons, as we'll cover with the New England on the New England segment. Brad, last 8 games of the season for the Jets, 6-2.
Awesome. Yeah, it's crazy.
6-2. They beat the. I'll read you off
That's
the game.
so surprising.
I know, right? I know. And if you're not a Jets fan, and I'm sure Jets, I know how this kind of things work. Jets fans watching this are probably like, about effing time somebody mentions this, because of course in the national, if you don't pay attention to the Jets, you probably haven't noticed. So when the over/under comes out for their win totals, and I think some of the sports books already have them out, suddenly you're probably going to get. My guess is you're probably going to get a lot of 8s and 8.5s, 8.5s. This is a team that could really take a step forward. Remember, Darnold hasn't. This is going to be like Darnold's kind of ascension year. We're going to see. Now they have some questions at wide receiver because I think Robby Anderson and Demaryius Thomas, I think, are both free agents. I know Robby Anderson is. So they have to figure out wide receiver there. I don't think anything's going to really change in the running game, but they have talent on the running game. They can run when they want to, but that's not going to be the focus of this scheme. So to me, the big question is, what are they going to do at wide receiver? In my mock draft, I had them taking a top-flight wide receiver. You got to help Darnold out a little bit with talent. Greg Williams is back. It's a little bit of a dysfunctional family organization there, but Greg Williams has his team playing well. He does he coaches strong, aggressive defenses. They blitz a lot. They generate turnovers. I like it. Let me read you off last 8 weeks of the season. Okay, 1, 2. Let me count this out. Okay, week 10, New York Giants. They win 27-18. Week 11, Washington Redskins. Not exactly murderer's row, those 2 games here. They win 17-23. Week 12, Oakland Raiders, who I think were underrated last year, especially at this time. They win this game, they win 34-3, blow the doors off of the Raiders. Let's see. Lose to the Bengals, mind you. Weird one. 22-6, they lose. Then they win they lose 22-6, yeah. They win the next game, Miami Dolphins, 22-21. They lose to the Ravens, obviously, 42-21. They beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, who needed that game to make it in the playoffs, and they're a pretty reasonable defensive team. They win that game 16-10. And then they beat the Bills, last game of the season, but the Bills were resting their starters. They win that game 13-6. So once the schedule kind of lightened up for them, they won a lot of games. So to me, that means next season, if we're looking at 2020, again, assuming they fill out the roster, maybe a couple offensive linemen interior, maybe get 1 or 2 of those receivers back, suddenly I think you're looking at a team that is going to win the games they should win, maybe lose the games they should lose. But if Darnold can come back and play a little bit better and continue incrementally getting better, it would not shock me, especially with the CBA. The rumor is that there's going to be 7 playoff teams per conference now. Wouldn't shock me if they're challenging with maybe Indianapolis, a team like that, to get that set. Oakland, Denver, who I think we're both a little bit higher on than most people are. They could challenge for a playoff spot next year. They really could.
Right. I think we're kind of reaching the point in the league where anybody could challenge as long as they just kind of get out of their own way a little bit. It's like Detroit should have been challenging every year for the past 15 years. If they just managed to get out of their own friggin' way.
Look, next season with the 7, because I think that's agreed on. I don't know that there's there's some things with revenue sharing, gambling, and all that. That's the stuff. I think everybody agrees that we're moving to 7 playoff teams per conference next year. So there's going to be 1 bye and then 3 wild card games, which I love, by the way. More football is a good thing.
Wait. How does it work? So one team gets a bye.
Yep, and then there are 3
games per conference.
Yep.
And then so three winners prevail, and then the 1 remaining team.
Yep.
Okay,
there
so
you go.
Okay, I got it.
You put 3 and 1 together, you still got 4, brother.
So does that add a week of playoffs?
No,
it doesn't.
No, all it does is so this past season, Kansas City would have been in wild card weekend, and they would have played Pittsburgh. That's what would have happened this year on that conference, and then on the.
So they're going to add a playoff team. Are they adding games as well?
What do you, there's going to be
season?
Yeah, there should be a 7. That's the big thing. From what I'm seeing at this point, I believe the players are. It's going to be a close vote. Some players are in favor of it, some aren't. But yeah, there's supposedly going to be a 17 game season, which would be interesting.
I don't know, man. I mean, let's say I made $250,000 a game.
They got that figured out.
Can we add 10 more of those, please? Like what would be the reasoning for any one of those guys to say no, not one more time?
Wear and tear on body is the big thing. And maybe part of it too I think is the players, are kind of comfortable with where they are now, but they also know that the NFL really wants this. And so I think that they feel like they can get a bigger portion of at least the revenue for that 17th game. And they're going to prorate the contracts out. What I'm not clear on is if they're prorating the guaranteed money out. So say I sign like a 2-year, $20 million deal, but 14 of it was a signing bonus. Are they prorating that signing bonus? I honestly don't know. I would think that they would, but I don't know. So anyway, there's a bone of contention there with that extra week. They're also increasing the value of the playoff games because a lot of players, at least the top line players, like they actually take a pay cut for the playoffs. They get paid, but it's a smaller game check, so they're figuring that out. But it's going to be interesting. Now, I mentioned, so if this was in place last year, Kansas City would have played Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh would have come to Kansas City and lost to Kansas City in the playoffs there. Pittsburgh in their wonderful defense. By the way, Pittsburgh, dude, I can't wait to talk about them. Maybe we'll talk about them next week. I think they're going to be 13-3 next year.
Yeah.
If Roethlisberger can play the whole year, this team is primed to challenge Baltimore. It would not shock me if they win the division. No disrespect to Baltimore, just a lot of respect to Pittsburgh. On the NFC side, the LA Rams would have played the who was the 2 seed? The Green Bay Packers in the playoffs. So
it's interesting. Yeah. I don't hate it. I like it.
Yeah, it's cool. It's going to be harder, and I think that number 1 seed is going to be a lot more important. And what's going to happen now is at the end of the season, there are going to be a lot more games that matter that last week of the season, which is interesting. Because, as people,
I like that too.
Yeah, me too. And especially because you and me do picks, right? And one of my worst things is betting week 17 because, you get basically 6 games that matter in week 17.
Right.
And you got teams starting like 3rd-string quarterbacks just to see what they got. And, you got all these things happening.
It's lame. It's tough.
It is. And now this makes that week for us, as bettors and pick makers and all that stuff, a little bit easier.
Sure.
So I like that, man. And plus, I actually do better later in the season with picks. So even in week, let's call it week 16 now, depending on what they do, because I guess it'd be an 18-week season if they expand. My picks between weeks 4 and week 16 are at like 70%, whereas my picks the first 3 in the last week of the season, because of the oddity, are at like 50%. So I usually come back down to about 58 to 62, depending on how good I am on those weird weeks. So now we're talking about getting more games that matter later in the season. That's going to improve at least the way I make my picks. It's going to improve me. So I'm excited about it. I think I'm going to make a lot more money.
That's it.
That's what it's all about.
That is exciting, is it not?
It's all about this podcast. Hey, we're called Get Paid for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Hey, man, that was a fun show. I like talking football, man.
Love it.
A little football fix
for
everybody. Cool. Okay, since we do it, you got nothing to do today, Brad. I know you don't.
Well, I gotta leave now and meet my buddies. So what do you got for me?
You're antsy. Okay, so we'll save the quarterback. Who would you rather have, Tom Brady or ex-quarterback we're going to do that next week then.
All right, I like that. Yeah.
All right.
Let's call the hook.
Yeah, let's call it the second week in a row teaser. So we'll do that next
good.
week. All right. Hey, Brad, have a great time with your friends. Thanks for your time as
brother.
always.
Have a good time in St. Louis, buddy.
Yep. And,
safe travels.
If you're going to be in Orlando this weekend or next weekend, let me know.
I will let you know, for sure.
Cool, man. All right, talk to you later, everybody. If you're in Orlando, let me know. At TFS_Sean. I'll try to avoid you because I like my privacy. But, everybody, hey, go out and make some bets. Get paid.